Welcome to the InfoWars Nightly News. It's Monday, September 8th, 2014, and I'm Leanne McAdoo. Here's tonight's top stories.
Tonight, President Obama expects a long war against ISIS. Then, what the government really thinks about vaccines and autism. And how law enforcement can use technicalities to seize your property. That's next on the InfoWars Nightly News.
I mean, I've had them where the cops would just see me in a car, pull me over, going to jail because I'd shot my mouth off. They were dealing drugs.
Obama spoke yesterday about what will be his plan to deal with ISIS. Some people are saying it amounts to little more than him making a speech and asking Congress for more money. Now, the New York Times has laid out Obama's plan to defeat ISIS, and the administration warns that this effort is going to take years to complete and continue after Obama has left office. First, there's going to be a sustained air campaign to roll back ISIS gains in northern and western Iraq. They don't give any details about how this is going to work, since no ground troops will be deployed. Next, the U.S. will shuffle around the government in Iraq to make it more inclusive. Now, following the U.S. invasion and the toppling and eventual execution of former CIA operative Saddam Hussein, Iraq predictably descended into sectarian violence. And Julie Levesque writes that what is unfolding there is a process of constructive chaos engineered by the West. So here, when they go on to say that they're going to bring up a new government in Iraq, it's basically history repeating itself. She goes on to say the destabilization of Iraq and its fragmentation has been planned long ago and is part of the Anglo-American Israeli military roadmap in the Middle East. And it was an effort introduced during the Bush administration and coined the New Middle East by then U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. Now, the final element of Obama's plan to deal with ISIS calls for a de facto invasion of Syria. The Pentagon estimates that this part of the plan will take at least 36 months. Now, Kurt Nimmo points out in this article that that number is meaningless if you look at the history of U.S. invasion. Now, Nimmo points out that this is going to turn into a war on civilians. After a sustained air campaign, ISIS will be forced to retreat back into the civilian population in order to hide all of their artillery and their weaponry. The only way they can do that is by melting in with the civilian population. So much like with the 2003 invasion of Iraq, we're going to have mass civilian casualties. Nimmo points out that the U.S. ran out of military targets within the first few days of the 2003 invasion of Iraq. It then concentrated on civilian infrastructure and so-called dual-use targets, electrical power, media, and telecommunications installations. And there were even more of these civilian infrastructures taken down during the first invasion of Iraq, which we're saying this is just a continuation of creative destruction in the region. In addition to further balkanizing Iraq, this ISIS war is now going to serve as a way to take down the Assad government in Syria. Now, this ultimate objective was outlined by the World Tribunal on Iraq in 2005. They said, in declaring a global war on terror, the U.S. government has given itself the exclusive right to use aggressive military force against any target of its choosing. Ethnic and religious hostilities are being fueled in different parts of the world. Now, in late June, President Obama asked Congress for $500 million to arm vetted members of the Syrian opposition. He wanted to give even more money to Syrian opposition. But wait, didn't Obama just do this a year ago, only to find out that those arms were going into the hands of al-Qaeda extremists? And these are essentially the same ones that the U.S. will be waging war against any minute in Iraq. Well, yes, but this time Obama said he had a fail-safe plan. The U.S. wants funds for moderate Syrian rebels. This is what he's requested from Congress. They said they're basically going to be vetting the rebels, which will really amount to asking them, are they for or against U.S. policies in the region? And then they can say, oh, yes, we're for the U.S., and they will be given weapons. But the problem is, how do you define who is a moderate? That is the big question. How do we know these arms aren't going to get into the hands of our enemy? Now, this article is up on Infowars.com. Syrian rebel commander, yes, we're still collaborating with ISIS. So this was a commander with the Free Syrian Army, and he admitted to fighting alongside several terrorist organizations. This was Commander Basil Idris, and he said, "We are collaborating with the Islamic State and the Nusra Front by attacking the Syrian army's gatherings in Qalamun." He said, "Let's face it, the Nusra Front is the biggest power present right now in Qalamun, and we as FSA would collaborate on any mission they launch as long as it coincides with our values." Now, Idris also went on to mention the FSA's dwindling power, saying many of his U.S.-backed fighters continue to pledge allegiance to ISIS. And another retired Syrian army colonel also acknowledged the growing power of ISIS by saying, "In the end, people want to eat, they want to live, and the Islamic State has everything." So despite openly admitting to working with terrorists for well over a year, Syrian rebel groups are going to continue to be funded and armed and trained by the Obama administration. And of course, Obama has asked for $500 million in June. Congress at the time said, "We aren't a rubber stamp, and we are going to heavily scrutinize this request for war funding." We'll fast forward now a couple of months, and we have two very politicized, very questionable beheading videos that surfaced while Congress was on recess. Well, now that these videos are making the rounds and public support for attacking ISIS militarily has increased, I don't think Obama is going to have any problem receiving this funding from Congress. It's kind of convenient how that happens, right? Well, Paul Joseph Watson spoke with Robbie Martin, who tells his astounding story of how he and his friend faked a beheading video and fooled the global media. This was years ago.
It was a pretty intense time period. And when we actually finally saw the video, we had to go to the file sharing networks to download it. They didn't have the full video on the media. It was just parts of it. When we finally saw it, we were struck by how, I hate to say it, how phony or just how fake it appeared to be. I don't know if the video itself was fake, but what I'm trying to say is it could have easily been faked by anyone.
So this video was created years ago. Technology has increased exponentially since then, so there is no telling how realistic special effects can be, even with basic equipment. Now, after it turned out that this was a hoax, the global media issued a retraction, but the FBI was promptly sent to interrogate Martin, who believes that perhaps maybe the AP reporters were really embarrassed by it, and so they sicked the feds on him in retaliation for fooling them. But basically, the FBI said that it was illegal, even though it's not really illegal for them to create these beheading videos, basically saying that they were crying wolf, making people, first of all, fearful that someone had been beheaded, but then to question the validity of these videos. But that, of course, raises concern about the timing of the beheading videos, of course, as it coincides now with Congress coming back in and having to authorize this spending for Obama. Now, what about simulating terrorists crossing the border? Now, our own InfoWars reporter Joe Biggs did this last week. He was able to cross the Mexican border into Texas dressed as ISIS, carrying a severed head. James O'Keefe has also filmed an actor dressed up as an Ebola-infected ISIS terrorist who is carrying bags filled with fake ricin and fake Ebola, and they motorboated right from Canada into the United States. He narrates the video and says, "On the eve of the 9/11 anniversary, our man was dressed as an ISIS terrorist. He was able to cross Lake Erie, walk off a boat into Cleveland, Ohio, and into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. At no point did anyone even question him or ask him what he was carrying in his suspicious brown duffel bag." Now, according to federal law, boaters who cross from Canada to the U.S. must notify the Customs and Border Protection Agency, but do they do that? That's an open question. Do people even know about that requirement? And as most of our recent videos have made very clear, it is not necessary, and it's something that can be done very easily, and it's being done very easily every single day by illegal aliens as well as drug traffickers. Now, coming up, find out how the U.S. has admitted kind of backhandedly, how vaccines do indeed cause autism. And then watch the system at work when cops beat a man who was just asking them a question.
This is Alex Jones for InfoWarsLife.com. The latest in preparedness is now here. An electrically stabilized colloidal silver solution that can be added to both your home cabinet and preparedness pack alike. Concentrated to 30 parts per million in what has been dubbed the survival silver solution. The new InfoWars Life Silver Bullet Colloidal Silver is the answer for you and your family. And it's entirely free of toxic artificial additives that are loaded into many products. The InfoWars Life Silver Bullet Silver is so powerful that it is concentrated into a 2-ounce bottle and is not recommended for extended continual use. This is not a low-grade formula. We are working with one of the top laboratory manufacturers in the United States to bring you the best form of colloidal silver using electrical processes within a base of deionized water for your preparedness storage or your home kitchen. Purchase your bottle of InfoWarsLife.com Silver Bullet Colloidal Silver today and find other amazing supplements at InfoWarsLife.com.